Hamburg was Germany's startup capital. What I didn't like at all was going out and speaking to people, to potential customers. I just hated it. I'm the strongest introvert you can imagine. And
Come on.
yes, every
I wouldn't
personality
believe it.
test,
Yeah,
every
okay.
personality test testifies, like I'm at the end of the scale, of the introvert scale. Even people who say, I don't look at that, they can't control their subconscious. It doesn't work.
Welcome to the Found Podcast, a podcast where we interview the movers and shakers of the Hamburg tech scene. This is the first episode, and as our first ever guest, we have the pleasure to welcome Iskender Dirik. So Iskender is a friend, but he's also a man of many talents, and as he was the perfect first guest. So essentially, he started in tech as a founder. He exited several companies. He then migrated to corporate roles at Microsoft, Samsung, Wix. Evolved into an investor over time, so is a prolific angel investor, including in unicorns. And nowadays, he's an advisor to CEOs and business leaders, and also a prolific content creator. So we're very happy and very much looking forward to the discussion with Iskender today. Iskender, how are you?
I'm absolutely fine.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. I mean, Kirilo, you're doing well. It's the first episode of the Found Podcast. It's happening, finally.
Yeah, we were just talking about like being excited and nervous at the same time, I think, while starting recording the podcast. So yeah, that's how I feel. But yeah, Iskender, super nice to have you as our first guest.
What an honor.
Yeah.
Thanks for accepting the invitation. I mean, when thinking of who could be the perfect first guest, I mean, my mind directly went to you. So yeah, thankfully it worked out schedule-wise, and looking forward to the convo.
Let's go.
All right. So the first thing we'd like to talk to you about, so it's a recent highlight of yours, is Parloa, right? AI unicorn that you're an investor on. And I mean, you know, they recently raised 350 million Series D at a 3 billion valuation. And I want to focus maybe on Malte, the founder, who you know well. And I remember that you telling me once that when you met Malte, it didn't take too long. As a matter of fact, within 2 minutes, you knew like there was something special about this guy, right? That he was like cut from a different cloth. And I guess my question is like, what exactly did you see in him that you knew like, okay, this guy's gonna go far, and if I can, I might want to put money on this bet.
I didn't see. I felt. So the context is I helped Malte to raise his Series A round. He went through my fundraising coup program, which is a program for startups raising funds, and most of them are in the seed and Series A stage. And Malte and I had a call where it was about him and me checking if there's a potential fit for a partnership to work on his Series A together. Me as an advisor, and these calls, I own them usually. So I set the agenda, I lead the calls, and we started the call, and he was like, "Hi, Iskender, thanks for your time. So I would like to learn today about X, Y, Z. Let's do a short intro round." That was the moment where I felt this is a very strong founder, because he is leading the room, and he was trying to own the room. And then it was a constant fight. Like I was like, no, I'm the driver here.
Yeah.
That's my call. That's my Zoom room. So I tried to get back the lead, and then we were kind of co-leading. That was the first moment, like the first 20 seconds, where I was like impressed by his leadership. And it's sometimes these little small signals. You know, we are living in a world where we are receiving millions and millions of signals. And we as investors, we don't have the capacity, the resources, the time to process every signal, to look for the complete truth. So we assess things as human beings based on a few signals. And it's all about the signaling. And this signal to me, this little anecdote, signal to me, wow, that's a strong founder. And how he did it, how he was leading the room, by not being an asshole. He was not rude. That's important.
Right.
So it's all about personality, right? Like in the first place, because like you also said, I guess that his seed deck that he showed to you didn't impress you at first, right?
No, it just didn't. Not only me. Like in my podcast, he explained that in his seed round, he almost failed, and there was just one investor in the pipeline left, and that one invested. That's why he was then able to go on. Else, he would have sold the company at a very early stage. So, but there was one more thing in this call that I still remember, and that was his motivation to work with me. Because I have founders who come very desperately to me, like Iskender, I have no idea how this fundraising game works. Or founders who come to me like, I tried it, I failed. I have already spoken to 100 investors, please help. And Malte was like, literally, he was like, Iskender, I know I will raise this round. Even though he had that bad experience from the last round. But he was like, I will raise this round. It will be a good round. But I know if I only improve by 1% the outcome of the round with your help, it will be worth it. What I like there are two things, the combination of two things. One is the confidence. Second is the openness to learn.
Coachability.
The
right?
coachability.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I know what's worth to work, to partner with, to collaborate with great people. And I know it's worth it if I can only improve, in this case, the outcome by 1%.
And I think I heard him also say on that podcast that one investor saw him pitch. I don't know which series or round it was, but and said, I've seen thousands of pitches. This is literally the best one I've ever seen.
Series A, yeah.
Series A. So can anyone reach that level, or do you need some kind of
course.
foundation?
With me, everyone can reach. With my help, everyone
Always
can
so,
reach
yeah.
that level. Everyone can reach that level if you are serious about it. Look, like I myself, I'm the strongest introvert you can imagine, and
Come on.
yes, every personality
believe it.
test,
Yeah,
every
okay.
personality test testifies like I'm at the end of the scale, of the introvert scale. So at school, I was afraid to come late because this alone the imagination of coming into the class and everyone looking at you because you're late just freaked me out. So and in university, I was really like, is there a way to get through this without having to present? Strong introvert. And at some point, I was like, if I want to achieve what I want to achieve in life, I need to change that. So I worked on that, on my presentation, communication skills, etc. I became a nerd when it comes to communication. And today, when I'm on the stage, people are like, people who know me well, like there was this one presentation I gave keynote at the OMR festival years ago. And there was a former business partner of mine who know me inside out, actually. And that was the first time he saw me, however, the first time saw me presenting a keynote at such a stage. And after that, he came to me and was Iskender, who was that? Who
Dr.
was
Jekyll
that?
or Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I learned to turn the switch. And I learned that, not because I'm an extrovert, it was not in my DNA. So everyone who is serious about it can learn it, can learn to present, to pitch, to fundraise, and not just to do it like the 1% of the best people out there do it.
People who are going to be listening to this podcast, they're like mostly early stage founders, and I met like personally a lot of them who would describe themselves as like being introverted as well. What were like top 3 things that helped you to achieve this level, when you like had enough courage to go on stage, to present yourself, to pitch?
First, invested time to learn the theory.
Okay.
And that is one of the reasons why I love working with nerds, with technical people, because the moment they understand, they have a gap and they are serious about closing that gap, they are my best, the best founders I work with in terms of I give them the stuff, like the theory, my frameworks, and then they became a nerd in learning that. So one side, learn the frameworks. It's all out there. There are enough people like me who can help them. They need people to help them. And then force yourself to practice. Force yourself to practice. Look, going back to my personal example, at the university I started, the first day I will never forget, there was an older student who I know, who I knew, and I asked him what I just said. Is there a way to get through this without having to present? I was so afraid. And then there was this switch when I was like, that I also described recently, where I was like, I need to learn how to present. And that was the moment where I forced myself to use every occasion to present. I was at the university here in Hamburg, where you could choose if you want to write a written
Papers, right?
paper,
Homework.
Homework,
Mm-hmm.
and present it. You had to present it in front of the class, or if you just go the normal way and do the normal formal tests, written tests. So I decided to always do homework, write a paper, and present it. So I forced myself. At the end, I was the guy who was always standing in front of the class presenting, and everybody knew me because I was the guy in the front. So you have to use every occasion, put yourself out there, and that will make you better.
It takes balls though. Like not everybody would have stepped outside of their comfort zone like that. So I guess all the power to you for building up that skill.
As always in life, it's about leaving the comfort zone.
Yeah.
But it's changing now, right? I mean, because like when I studied, so I finished my studies like 2 years ago, and we didn't have a possibility like to select between these two options that you mentioned, right? I mean, if you had like a paper to write, then you would be like presenting it in front of the class, right? You would have like some slides prepared, and it just like naturally forces you to come out of your like comfort zone. So I think like students who are studying these days, they already are at an advantageous position because they can learn on the spot.
If there's this option, it's a rare thing still, though. Yeah.
So maybe like take us back. You mentioned like young, shy Iskender working on his, public presentation skills. So now you're this investor extraordinaire, tech renaissance man, CEO whisperer. LinkedIn is a kilometers long. But did you? What was your first experience maybe in tech? Did you always know you wanted to work in tech? Did you? Okay, so
I always knew.
Because I've seen some pictures you've shared of you like sporting a goatee at the computer. So it sounds like you always had this passion. So
yeah,
how did it start, the journey?
I realized lately how it started. It started with a Commodore 64.
I know that, but I'm old. So.
We are old, yeah.
Okay, I have no idea what is that.
You have no idea what a Commodore is. I'm so sorry for you, man. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It was one of the first mass personal computers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And my father had a different kind of businesses, and one was, we call it here in Germany, import-export. So which actually means trading things, selling things. And he was very focused on selling electronic devices, buying second-hand devices and selling them. And one of them was this Commodore 64. So we would not have had the money to buy it new. So I got that from my father, and I was fascinated. I was fascinated, and of course I played, but I also coded back then. And that caught me. So, and I think from there on, it was clear to me I want to do something related to technology.
And founding, right? So seems like you always knew you also wanted to build your own thing, right? Yeah. So did you start up?
Yeah, with 21, I founded my first startup. Okay. I took a personal loan by my father's from my father's lawyer. So it was very classic. I didn't have an uncle to ask, so I grew up here in Hamburg and Wilhelmsburg within a very immigrant-heavy community. But my father, he had that one German lawyer, and he gave me money. So I took a loan from him. And back then, why did I took the loan? Because I needed to pay a coder. That was, we are talking about 2002.
Yeah.
No lovable, no close code, just very expensive coders, developers. So I had to pay him. Yeah.
And how did it work out in the end?
Very bad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a silly idea.
Okay.
I wanted to build a German-Turkish B2B marketplace that fosters the trade between Germany and Turkey, and that is also focused on the SMBs, the Turkish SMBs in Germany. And I developed very complex concepts. I loved developing complex concepts, product ideas, etc., conceptualizing, writing papers. I loved that. What I didn't like at all was going out and speaking to people, to potential customers. I just hated it. And I guess that resonates with a lot of founders out there. And one of the reasons is, of course, like, especially if you have a technical background, you usually hate that. And the second is, you are so in love with your baby, your idea, right? And you want to avoid that someone else says something against your amazing idea. So I avoided it big time to fail big time. So I wanted to, it was very, like, the positive framing would have been, I was too early. I wanted to sell B2B marketplace memberships. And then at some point, I was not able to avoid it anymore, because the product was, I mean, it was for long good enough to go out and try to sell it. And then I went out with some friends. I built like a sales partnership network with friends, and everyone would get a commission, And then we were trying to sell this digital product to Turkish SMBs back then, and realized, oof, they don't even have an email.
Okay.
Operating on fax machines. 2002, they don't usually even have internet in their offices, or let's not say offices, it's often like the supermarket, the little Turkish supermarket, etc. So it was so far away from the target group what we built. Yeah, it was a big mistake. And at some point, years later, because we were not able emotionally to kill it. It was a GmbH, everything. I think we only liquidated it 10 years later or something. So, which leads us to fail fast, please. Yeah, if you fail fast.
You took like a big risk. I mean, was it like in your sort of like nature that you were like always willing to take risks? Because I mean, like founding GmbH, taking along with like your first venture, right? This is not something that you hear like happening a lot like out there, right? People want to start like small, maybe, you know, like minimize the risk, and maybe then when they have like enough experience, they would go like all in, you know, getting partners on board and stuff. Like, how did it work for you? I mean, why you decided like to go all in with this idea?
I would not say that I'm a risk taker. It's rather the contrary, given to how I grew up, and given that I felt for many years in my youth, my 20s, what it means to not have money, to be always at an existential level when it comes to money. That led to not being a risk taker. So I would not say that. Back then, I don't know, perhaps I was a bit naive. I was. Second, I was very convinced. And third, I was young, so I was 21. I was studying, so I did it at the side besides studying. That's why for me the only risk was the back then, I don't know, 20,000 Deutsche Mark or something.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, debt and loan that I took. So, and that was for me okay, given that I was still studying. But again, like I would not say I'm a big risk taker. I wish I would have been a bigger risk taker in my life.
Would you say it's a muscle you've built up over time? So this appetite for risk, because it seems like you're always working on the next thing, right? You've had so many different, let's call it phases to, you know.
Yeah, perhaps a bit, but still I can freak out when it comes to taking risks.
Angel investing, that's a risky business. Where you de-risk.
If you're not, of course it's a financial risk, but I would not do that if I would expect anything from the money.
Yeah. So it's money you're willing to lose, kind of.
Yes.
Which is how it should be, right?
Yes, 100%.
What was your first angel investment check? What was your first investment and how did it turn out?
Oof.
I don't even remember. What was my first
some Kickstarter project? I mean,
I really don't. I have to say I don't remember. Which means that it apparently didn't turn out very well.
Probably right.
How did you like get into that space? I mean, why you decided to start like angel investing?
Because it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, you can lose a lot of money, but it's fun. It's fun. It's like, I mean, look, I've worked in funds as a fund manager, and the big difference is that as an angel, you don't need to align with others, with your partners, etc. With I've also worked in corporate venture capital funds. You don't need to align with the board, etc. So that is especially when you have had that experience of a lot of required stakeholder management. Then you appreciate it a lot when you can be okay. I like this. I don't need to rationalize towards others. I didn't need to write papers. I just believe in this and I'm investing. By the way, this is at the same time a big risk. So you can be very impulse driven when you do it, but it's fun, and it's also a great way to build a network. For me, it was a good way to build a network because you're co-investing with other investors. That's a great way to build a network when you are on the same cap table. And I always loved working with founders. So, and I love not just putting money into a company, but especially helping the founders and being part of that journey, even if it's a super tiny part.
Understand that. Same here, I think, right?
Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
kind of the same boat. But as we're on the topic of angel investing, so I've seen some recent investments of yours. So ISP Tech, which is a satellite propulsion that recently raised a 5.5 million seed, Undercore, AI-driven industrial.
Yeah, but these are
wholesale.
not investments of mine.
Okay.
That's where I advise the CEOs on
Okay.
fundraising, go to market.
Okay, got it.
Executive branding, yeah.
So I saw like 5 or 6 of those companies, and they seem to all be in the deep tech space. So is that a new focus of yours, or is it like more a reflection of the local ecosystem or how the VC market is trending, that you're more advising technical, scientific founders?
I think it's more because first, I love it. I love deep tech. I love deep tech founders. I love scientists. I love people with technical background.
It's like what you said about like loving to work with nerds, like
Yeah,
how they sort of
I
like deep
absolutely
down,
love
right
that.
in the
Yeah,
trenches.
yeah, I absolutely love that. I was like for 6 years or something for my career, I was managing a tech consultancy and software development consultancy, where my day-to-day was working with big data developers, data scientists, etc. And I just loved it and still love it. So, and I think when you love something, you attract it. So I think that's one. The second is usually that's the target group that benefits even more than others
Enormously, right,
from my knowledge. Bridging the gap when it comes to communication, to storytelling, to positioning. And what I really hate is I hate seeing a great founder with a great idea failing because they are not able to communicate it well.
Yeah.
And
All substance but no form,
yeah,
right? So
yeah. And in Germany, especially, we have a lot of substance. We also have in our DNA a bit of an aversion against
the American
yeah,
posting
selling, right?
sort of-
Yeah.
packaging, but that's what we need
100%.
to attract investors, clients, partners, talent. So, and I love to bridge that gap. They need it.
I hear you. No, I'm glad we ended up on that topic, because I think this is a rich sort of treasure box full of insights, because you often talk, especially on LinkedIn, about the importance of storytelling, how to craft a narrative. That even goes into style, right? How people dress, how they present. So let's start with storytelling, right? Like it's becoming, I think, common narrative that it's like a USP, right? If you can tell a good story, you're that much closer to succeed. And the most prominent brands nowadays in tech, they really nail that down. What's your view on that, right? As a Storymaxxing and storytelling as a new moat in tech, and what do you think? Maybe we.
It's not a new mode.
Okay,
It
right.
was
yeah,
always a
it's all right.
mode, but I think that people are more and more realizing that's a mode. And there are many, many reasons for that. One is also that paid market, it becomes more and more difficult to attract new customers via paid marketing. So in the old world, it was a bit, it was easier to just pay a bit for Google AdWords, for social media ads, etc. And we are getting, again, going back to the signal theory, we're receiving so many signals every day. And thus, it's a natural development that good stories become more and more important as differentiating factors. And it will only become more important. Also, with all the AI content on LinkedIn, etc., there are two things that will become more and more important. One is good stories, compelling stories, stories that stick. And the second is the person telling them. The person, that's why we are seeing already an increasing interest in personal branding, executive branding. That is what will differentiate you going forward from all the people just posting AI content, from going forward the bots posting AI content. So it's that combination of a compelling story and the person telling it.
For those folks who are like, interested into getting into that space, like, putting themselves out there, like improving their like storytelling and stuff, do you have like specific founders that you follow or like that you can say are like the best examples out there, like in Germany, in terms of like how they, are talking about like their story, how they're like putting themselves out there?
In Germany, there are
Yeah.
not that many, to be honest.
Okay.
So in the US, there are many. Of course, watch Malte Kozub of Parloa. That's an easy one. I think who's also doing a good job is Johannes. I think I forgot his name. No, the founder of Socks.
Ah, okay, that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. He's and then I'm not so good with names. Yeah, but there are not that many, to be honest, that I would see as a best practice in Germany.
In the US, who do you look up to as a perfect example of a good brand builder, storyteller?
I mean, of course, Elon Musk is a good. You can think about him what you want. When you look, and I think that's one of the most impressive examples of storytelling, when you look at Tesla's enterprise value, and also not just now, the last years. Now there is more substance to it than before in terms of delivery, etc. But when I've used it years ago as an example for storytelling, when you would have looked at the multipliers the stock market pays for Tesla, where there was not a lot of substance, it was a lot of vision, a lot of storytelling, versus old-fashioned manufacturers that seem to have much more substance. So from an investor perspective, it would have made, like you could say, argue that the substance is much more worth. No, it was the story. And that brings me to another point about storytelling, which is often it's associated with the early stages of startups.
Exactly.
It's like, now we need to sell the vision. We don't have the substance yet, But that's a fallacy. So it's as important in your growth stage. It's as important when you IPO. It's all about the story going forward. And after your IPO, it's still as important, because what is the public market then evaluating? What are they investing in? They're investing in your future. That's why they are paying you now X for your shares, because they believe that it will be 2X, 3X in X months of time. So it's all about making people believe in a better future. That is all about story. And then there's another fallacy, which is, but the later the stage, the more the numbers are important.
Wanted to ask you that, yeah.
Yeah, which is not a fallacy in itself. It is true. However, if you do it the right way, numbers are part of the story. It's not there is a story and there are numbers. Numbers are, for example, proof points of a story. So it's all about the story.
Interesting. I want to switch gear maybe a little. So you talked about Wilhelmsburg, growing up in Hamburg. We met actually originally at a Afghani restaurant as part of a local meetup with Two Hearts, which is a tech community that you created. You mentioned as well, like growing up in this neighborhood, not always with the means to execute on your own vision, and maybe the lack of mentors in the tech space in your environment. So did that plant the seed for you to create Two Hearts down the road? And what was the sort of original concept of Two Hearts? How did that come about?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is, like, first of all the props to my co-founders. I'm one of four co-founders of Two Hearts, which, as you said, is nowadays the biggest tech community for people with immigration backgrounds in Europe, with almost 5,000 members, I think. And you are the Hamburg chapter of this wonderful community, and our blueprint for how to run a chapter. So thanks for that.
I'm a proud member of this chapter.
Yes, yes. So it was like, with Two Hearts, we wanted to create what we would have wished to have when we grew up. When not just grew up, but when we were in our 20s. So it was all about, like, it was completely driven by my experience from how I grew up, how I was raised, difficulties I had, and we wanted to build something that is the community we wish we would have had in our especially 20s.
When was that again? The start, like the foundation? Is it 5 years old now? 2020? Pandemic kind of?
Yes.
Yeah, right? Around
Yeah,
that
something
time?
around that, yes.
Yeah. And any particular stories you like to tell about the kind of impact it has had on some of the members? And
So many.
and you share those, by the way, on social, which I always
Yeah.
appreciate. Even if it's just the application, right, of somebody who wants to join, they share a little bit about their personal journey. I find those so inspiring.
Yeah, there are so many. Let me give you two examples, because they represent well what we represent. So Two Hearts was always built on two pillars. One is, yes, we wanted to be a business and career network, but the second is cultural diversity. And cultural diversity also means challenges you have because you, as we say it, have more hearts. So I have a German heart and I have a Turkish heart. And it's all about this combination. And I think the two examples I can provide of many, many others represent those pillars very well. So the first is one of our first core members, like the volunteering team, founding volunteering team. She became one of those. She joined us. She has also a German and Turkish heart. And at some point, I will never forget that she said, with Two Hearts, I learned to embrace my Turkish personality, because for many, many years I suppressed it. Because for me, it felt like an obstacle to have this second identity. So I focused a lot on my German identity. And with Two Hearts, I learned to appreciate that it's great to have two hearts, because you have everything two times, two cultures. You have two kind of food cultures also, two countries or even more, etc. And that, I never forget that, because that's life-changing. Look, there is someone suppressing half of his personality or her personality, and now they're embracing it. For me, that journey took 40 years already, almost. Yeah. That's one example. The other is, I can name him because it's public. You know him as well from the Hamburg chapter. It's Enis, Enis Topçu. So that's a very recent example. And that is more on the business side. That's why it represents both of our pillars very well. So with Enis, I grew up with his father in Wilhelmsburg. And our families knew each other forever. And Enis is the son of that Ibrahim I grew up with. And years ago, we had a phone call for the first time. I gave him some career advice. And then years after, which is like last year, he contacted me via email. And he also asked for some guidance, etc. years after. And then I was like, I left it in the inbox. And I was like, I felt that I should invite this guy for lunch or dinner. I had this feeling. At the same time, you know the drill. We all have so many priorities, etc. So I'm a zero inbox guy. Yeah, but I left it in my inbox for months. Usually I would archive this. So I didn't. And then I was like, come on, Iskender, there would not be the time if you wait for it where you have time. So make it. And then I wrote him an email. I was like, look, how about a lunch? And then we had lunch in Bagdheide, where both of us are currently living, which is a suburb of Hamburg. So he came to Bagdheide. And then we had a lunch, and I had a Malte moment with this guy.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
It was the first time I was seeing him in person. Like the energy in those first 2 minutes, that was crazy. The energy and his articulation. So he also grew up in a very migrant environment, but his German articulation, communication, and he was very, very polite, so thankful. By the way, I always say it, we have also mentorship program at Two Hearts, right? So there are a lot of things you can do to be a good mentee. Yeah. So he was very polite. He was always appreciating everything. He was so thankful. Gave me so much energy. And I was always, look, you gave me as much energy as I helped you, at least. There was a lot he gave back by just that energy. And he was not in tech at all. He was like a business development in an old school German, I don't know, Sanitärbetrieb or something. Like an old school industry, had no idea about tech. He didn't know what venture capital is, etc. And I was like, Enis, have you ever considered going into tech as your industry? Because you're such a like very open-minded guy, etc. Perfect fit. And then I was like, Enis, you should do sales. Like you're a sales guy. You're a natural born talent. And he was like, I don't know. And then and then I told him about Two Hearts. Okay. And I was like, my first recommendation, apply, state as a reference my name. I will make sure that because I have the reference point that you'll get in. So then we had some interaction in between. Long story short, fast forward 3 months later, what did he do? Not even 3 months, I think 2 months and a couple of days. What he did in those 2 months was he became a Two Hearts member. And then he did another thing that the best do when they want to get value out of Two Hearts, which is not leaning back, but he leaned in. So he joined the Hamburg chapter meetings, he networked, he really did proactively everything that you can do to get the best value out of this community. He wrote to people, he saw that someone, Onur, from Berlin is looking for a certain role for his portfolio company. Then he worked at the side or something for them to get more ideas about how tech works. And then he, again, theory. He read everything. I recommended him some reads. He read everything. In those 2 months, that was transformational for him. And then he applied for a sales job at Stripe. Like, come on, one of the biggest tech companies here. And fast forward, he was accepted by Stripe. Now he's living with his fiancée, or now wife, in Dublin, working for Stripe in a sales job. This guy who has never been in tech, a couple of months ago, with no idea what venture capital is, how startups work. And yeah, it's like I'm getting so much energy out of the story myself.
Such a cool story. And knowing Enis, he's very like he'll follow up with emails that are super heartfelt, right? He's an authentic guy, and he's very polite, but also just so proactive. Like he makes his own luck, right? He puts himself out there. So
Yeah, and there, like one of my main messages for him was leave your comfort zone again.
Yeah.
Like, this is also one of my biggest life learnings. Leave your comfort zone. And then he said something I will never forget. He said, I thought I already left my comfort zone, but I realized I was only swimming in the pools in my neighborhood, while I didn't really realize there are oceans out there in the world where I can swim in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's worth a lot. I wanted to touch on something as well. So Hamburg, right? So Found Hamburg is a local media here. We talk about the local ecosystem a lot. I don't come from Hamburg. I've been here for 3 years. I'm Canadian originally. Kirilo comes from Ukraine. How many years have you been in Hamburg?
5 years in Hamburg.
5 years. So we have this kind of limited view of the local startup scene. But you've been here your whole life. You've been based in Hamburg, I believe, your whole life. So I'm curious as to your thoughts about the local startup scene and the tech ecosystem and how it's evolved over time, and if you see perhaps at some point some potential that Hamburg can tap into to perhaps one day compete with the likes of Berlin or Munich, right, as a startup ecosystem. So I wanted to make sure I got your thoughts on that.
So I lived for 6 years in between in Berlin. So I have at the heart of the startup ecosystem. So I also have the comparison of, but I'm a Hamburger, yeah. So when I grew up, raised in the 2000s and started my first company and some others afterwards, what many don't know, and you will be probably surprised, Hamburg was Germany's startup capital.
Okay, this is
back in those
me,
days,
actually.
right? Yeah.
In those good old days.
Okay, wow.
Hamburg was
unexpected.
And one of the reasons is because back then, the dominating business models were, we called it new media. Like e-commerce and new media. It was a lot about marketing, advertising, and Hamburg was also Germany's media capital.
Yeah.
It still is, right?
It still somehow is, yeah. So a lot of advertising agencies, marketing agencies. Google had its first German office in Hamburg. Facebook, actually the first MD Germany of Facebook, Scotty Woods, he was one of my first angel investors in another startup I founded later on. The first Holger Meyer, the first employee of Google Germany, was another angel investor I had back in the days with the other company that failed. There was, and Axel Springer, the headquarter of Axel Springer was in Hamburg. So there was a lot media. It was a media capital. And it was one of the reasons why Hamburg was also the startup capital of Germany. Unfortunately, we lost ground big time.
What do you think, like, what do we need to do as a community, like, based here in Hamburg to keep those founders as Malte, for example, right? Because like he comes from Hamburg, he studied here, but then he decided like to move his company to Berlin, right? And to build it from there, basically. So, I mean, that's very unfortunate for Hamburg as a city, right? That we're like losing such talented founders who just like decide to go to another place. Do you see like any, like potential aspects where we can improve as a city, and do we need to do it at all? Like maybe we should, I don't know, just like just stay calm, and let those founders go wherever they want to go, right?
No, they should stay here. Hamburg is a wonderful place. Like, first of all, it's the most beautiful city in Germany. Sorry, Munich.
Agree to that.
Sorry, Munich. It's just I love the city. So of course there's a lot of potential. I mean, it's the second biggest city in Germany. Again, it's a beautiful city. Life standards are high here. Life is good here in the north. The ocean. So we should do a lot to go back to glory days, or even better days than back then. And what we need is impossible founders. No, basically, that's what we need. We need more than a program. We need infrastructure here, that a system. yeah, not just that. There were always like so many programs, state initiatives, etc. But they were just also not bold enough, to be honest. So I'm so glad to see the boldness of Impossible Founders, the vision of Impossible Founders. So Hugo, maybe you can say for those that don't know 2 words about Impossible Founders, and then I will.
Yeah, I mean, in short, it's a deep tech startup factory, right? Was announced 6 months ago. Now we launched officially last week at our kickoff night, and the goal is to foster more technology transfer and spin-off activity, right? So, deep tech companies, how can we inspire more scientists to create their companies? How can we help the existing ones? Not from Hamburg, but also like northern Germany and even from beyond, right? Like you say, Hamburg is you can actually build here. It's not. So how can we facilitate that? I guess is the mission.
Yes, and there's now coming back to my love for deep tech and scientists, etc. There's amazing potential here. Most of us Hamburgers don't even know. So I just had a conversation with Arik, the CEO of Impossible Founders, before the podcast, and I was like, Arik, I will go today to the DESI, which is one of the globally leading science institutes. And for me, as someone born, raised here, now 45 years old, it's the first time I'm going to visit, interested in deep tech. So, and of course, I knew that there is DESI, but so in front of our doors and our neighborhoods, we have amazing scientific institutions. We have great universities. And much more also UKE, like on the medical side, we have great hospitals, research institutions, etc. It's all there. It lacks, first of all, awareness about all these. We have the harbor, which is an amazing ecosystem for startups in logistics space and other space. So there's so much. We have Airbus, so much. But first, we lack awareness. So someone needs to tell these stories. And second, we are missing the infrastructure, the system, because it's not enough that it's just there. So we need to leverage it. And that's why I'm so glad you guys will do that job.
I wanted to say, right, that's kind of partly why we created this podcast. I think there's a lot of stories to tell and, a light to shine on people that are building, investing, the movers and shakers of the local ecosystem. I feel everybody we've invited, they've kind of taken up on the offer, right? Like
they want to be visible, they want to be heard. They want to tell their story, like coming back to your point of storytelling, right? They want to tell their stories.
And we want to help Hamburg and northern Germany to put ourselves on the map.
Yeah. No, so thanks for validating the thesis. I think we're on a good way. Looking at the time, we should probably start to wrap it up. Any things you wanted to make sure we cover? Any rapid fire words?
I think we've covered like most of the things that we wanted to talk about. But maybe there is like one point that we completely skipped, right? Style, Iskender, you're like a
what?
A guy who like really loves fashion, right?
Okay, it's the first time in a podcast. Okay,
a style icon.
A style icon, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you posted, right, like on LinkedIn, some of your like recent posts. They got like a lot of traction. People went to your like comment section and just like started this discussion in terms of like how important it is to have some taste in terms of how you dress as a CEO of a company, or like more or less like working in corporates or like working in startups. I mean, my question would be, why is that so important to you? What do you, which value do you see in there, right? Because like in Germany, people tend to not pay that much of attention to like the way they present themselves and to the way that
or play it safe. And just to be sure, we talk about the same thing. There's this LinkedIn post where you posted like a clear picture of like let's say a tech executive dressed in a skinny dark blue navy suit with a red tie,
short jacket,
cognac belt.
Cognac shoes,
which
black buttons.
Which, admittedly, I saw that and I'm like, that's kind of a respectable fit. Like that's nothing to sneeze at. Like I've seen people that are way worse dressed, and it got a lot of comments. I think 350 comments. Like people probably like said, that's fine, or like why does it matter? So what's your sort of angle on the importance of style as a signal for for a CEO or in general, how you dress being
Brings us
part of
back
the
to the
pitch.
signals, to the signaling theory.
Yeah.
So we are sending signals by what we say. That's the most obvious signal, but also by how we look. And there are a lot of unconscious things that happen on the other side. On the other side are everyone who perceives us in a room, on a LinkedIn post, on our LinkedIn profiles. And we process information, a lot of signals unconsciously. And again, we as humans, we are exposed to so many signals that our brain needs to make assumptions based on a few signals. We can't always consider all the signals and all the information data points. So is Hugo a competent person? When I'm seeing him for the first time, I can't look at his CV, the jobs he has done, his references. I can't do reference calls. I can't even wait 10 minutes or whatever to listen to him and understand, is he a competent guy or not? My brain makes this assumption sometimes within milliseconds. We had that example of Malte, where I had this impression based on some factors. And our appearance is one of these signals. How we dress is one of these signals. And in these comments, you saw something that I predicted, because it happens always when you talk about this, especially in Germany. People are, yeah, that's so superficial. I tend to focus on substance.
Yeah, as you said, yeah.
There is no substance and style, appearance. Sorry, or. There is no or.
Yeah,
so it's not either or.
One.
Why can't you do both? And again, going back to our discussion about deep tech founders who have a great idea, how a great product, you can have a great idea, product, patent, IP, and package it well. It works both.
It's not mutually exclusive.
You don't need to decide.
Yeah.
And magic happens in business. We're talking about business, but it's also important when you date and on other areas of your life. But magic happens when both come together, substance and the packaging. And your style is part of that packaging of your personality. And the thing where I'm always laughing is when people are like, as in the comments, as like, no, I don't look at that. I don't judge on that superficial level. Look, guys, there are things you can discuss because you have different opinion, and then there are facts. And there is so much research out there. And I wrote another LinkedIn post about, I think, 9 different research experiments. There is so much research out there. It's a fact. We make assumptions about the competence of a person within milliseconds based on their appearance. Part of that appearance is their style, how their clothes, their hairs, everything. That's how it works. And even people, and that's also research, even people who say, I don't look at that,
subconsciously,
they can't control their subconscious.
Signals,
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it is important. Yes, no matter what you say. And nobody says, have a great style, but no substance.
So do you, when you advise CEOs, do you actually tell them about that? Like, are you giving them some style tips?
That's a great question. So, short answer is yes.
Okay.
But you need to be very, especially in Germany, very sensible.
Yeah.
So usually it's not the first thing I start with. Usually it's the moment we have a trusted relationship, etc. Then we are getting into these topics often.
It's something we should pay attention to. I mean, just if we're going to be on camera, people will look at our style. I knew I was sitting with you, and I know your theories on it, so I played it safe with my
impossible founders.
Yeah,
exactly.
it's like
a good first impression, you know.
So I need to.
That's sending signals as well.
Yeah.
So you're proud of wearing it.
He's a good follow on Instagram. So if
Yeah,
you're not
yeah.
following Iskender on Instagram, if you like style, tips, and brutalist jungle architecture, I think you'll enjoy his feed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe one last thing about your Instagram. I know you coded this website, I am Iskender. Probably you've never talked about this on the podcast, which I like
No.
to bring out that stuff because I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's this website where it's dedicated to every single wrong variation of your name that people have greeted you by. The main one being Dirik, like people, because your last name is Dirik, so I think people mistake your last name for your first name or don't make the effort to look into it. Some other favorite ones: Islander, Scanner,
Yeah.
AI Scander.
AI Scanner.
So
Sounds like a nice
why
domain.
does this never end? And what's the story there about that website? You know, what made you kind of gamify it and put it
So the
up?
story is my name is
Yeah,
this is also a two heart story, and
Yeah.
I think it will resonate with many people with two hearts out there who have not the easiest names. So my name is Iskender Dirik. By the way, it took me more than 4 decades to pronounce my name as my mother would do it. So it's not. I was always pronouncing it the German way,
Mhm.
and I changed to pronounce it the original way, which is Iskender. Iskender Dirik, and yeah, German, especially Germans, they see it and they think my name is Dirk. So I think that's and it seems that Iskender feels like a family name, not a first name. So I think the tipping point for me was I had always this problem, like since ever. But when I joined Microsoft, it was the first. I mean, I was with Bauer before, but corporate before big corporate in Hamburg, Bauer. But it was the first time when I joined Microsoft that I was joining such a big company. And then everyone mails, especially the position I had, I got a lot of mails from colleagues that didn't know me, and then they just look up my name in the company directory, etc., and drop me an email, etc. And as I had so many colleagues, especially in Germany, I was getting a lot of mails calling me Hi Dirk. And then I got annoyed by having to tell them each time that that's not my name. So that's why, and because I just love creating websites and creative assets, I came up with this idea to build imiskender.com. And from there on, I just sent them the URL. And the other thing that it felt less awkward for me, because I mean, it felt also awkward. That's the unfair thing. Like it's the wrong name, but I feel awkward to
Yeah,
tell
it's
them
on
that's the
you.
wrong name. It's on
Yeah,
me.
right. It's funny, but it's not funny, right?
Yes. So it made it easier for me. I was like, look, I am scanner.com, smiley. And they also didn't feel so bad then. It was also a service to them to show them you are not alone. Everyone is doing it wrongly. And then we left that conversation with a smile because it made them smile.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a great way to. When I saw it, it was also like, oh man, this is like it's kind of not shameful to be on that wall of shame, but it's also in jest, you know, in the tongue in cheek. And you send the link to someone, he's like, oh man, I'm so. They will for sure remember how to pronounce it. So I think it's a cool way.
I can relate to that so much. Like I'm struggling with my name like all the time. You know, like
How do
here
you
in
say it
Germany,
right?
especially like Kyrillo. That's like the Ukrainian.
Kyrillo.
Exactly. It's in the Ukrainian language, exactly. But then I have like a since I was born like speaking both languages, like Russian and Ukrainian, my Russian name would be Kirill, which is like more common here in Germany because you have like more people coming like from Russia, from Kazakhstan, like Russian speaking.
100%.
Exactly. But the Ukrainian one is still sort of like wild, exotic one. And I'm struggling with that so much. I also had like a list where I collected, you know, all the mispronunciation of my name, and but I didn't put it on the website. So maybe that's also a very good idea. You know, like I'm Kirillo.com or something like that. That would be cool. Yeah.
Collect them.
All right.
Cool. We're out of time, but I want to thank you for being our inaugural guest and sharing also like from the professional side, but also your personal stories. So I think it was a really cool conversation. Yeah, style guy.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah. So thanks.
Thank you guys.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Great stuff.
So if you like this content, please like and subscribe. So we're going to be publishing some interviews every 2 weeks. And this was the first episode of the Found podcast. So
let us know in the comments what did you think about this podcast, about Iskender. Give him a follow, and hopefully to the next episodes.
For sure. See you soon.